Good morning and welcome to the regular scheduled meeting of the Birmingham City Council of March 17, 2020 at 9:41. We're going to have our invocation by Councilor Stephen Hort and the Pledge of Allegiance by Councilor John Hilliard. If everyone could please stand.
Say good morning to all of you, to the mayor and to this council and to this august body. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. For God, that we are reminded that you are omnipotent, all-powerful, you're omniscient, all knowledge, you're omnipresent, you can be in all places at all times. And so, God, we beseech you right now, Lord. You know exactly what the cure is for this coronavirus. God, you know the fear that people are feeling right now. But, God, we reminded of your word. You say, if my people would call by my name, would humble themselves and seek your face. And so, God, we are here today seeking your face, to give us answers, to give us the wisdom to make the right decisions about safety, about protection, about our children. God, we need you to take care of them, provide for our families and those who will be interrupted by this coronavirus. God, if we ever need you, Lord, we need you right now. I'm not old enough to have lived through any crisis of this magnitude. But Lord, I do not have a spirit of fear. For your word said, do not fear, but of power and of might. And so, God, it is right now that we pull on your power, Lord, as only you can do. Father God, I ask for peace of mind. For those who have the responsibility to administer medicine, for those who have the responsibility to protect us as a country from harm and danger, and for those who have the position of power, Lord, we ask that you give them a cool head, one that is thoughtful, one that is intentional, and that one that is empowering. God, we ask now, Lord, that you bless this city as we come forth with decisions that we have to make that will certainly benefit our citizens. God, we bless every business, God, that would be affected by this coronavirus and these state of emergency measures that we are taking today, and that each city and hamlet throughout this country is having to make some tough decisions. But we pray that there will be decisions that we make that will benefit us all. For Father God, we do know that you are still in control and that you are still on the throne. And so, God, we give prudence, we give power, we give might to your existence and what it is that you can do. And we remember the word said there's nothing that's too hard for our God. And so, God, we beseech you right now to fix all things as only you can. And God, we be quick to give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. It is in Jesus' matchless, marvelous name we pray. Let us all who agree say amen.
Amen. Salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty, justice for all.
Good morning, Mr. Clerk.
Good morning.
How you doing? Good. Can we do roll call?
Council President Pro Tem Alexander. Good morning. Councilmember Hilliard.
President.
Councilmember Hoyt.
President.
Councilmember O'Quinn.
President.
Councilmember Smitherman. Good morning. Councilmember Williams.
Good morning.
Good morning. Councilmember Woods.
President.
Councilmember Abbott. President Parker.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Minutes are not ready for December 3rd, 2019 through March 10th, 2020. So good morning, Mr. Mayor. How you doing?
Good morning, Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Council, and good morning to the public. I'm going to attempt to be brief. First, I did want to update you all on what the city is doing as it relates to trying to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Yesterday, as many of you all know, as a city, we issued a state of an emergency and asked that people not attend any groups of over 25 people, as well as the county health department issued an order that restaurants and bars cannot serve food in their establishment, but rather call in orders, pick up, curbside, and delivery. I also want everyone to know that Birmingham City Hall is not closed. The city's essential departments will be open and will operate on a reduced crew. People needing to obtain business licenses, building permits, and other types of permits or pay fees will still be able to do so, as well as essential city services that include most employees within the city of Birmingham Police Department, Birmingham Fire and Rescue Service, Public Works, 911, and other departments, and garbage pickup will continue as well. And starting today, we have told our departments that those employees not working in essential roles may telework from home. My administration has asked department heads to assess its operations and let us know who's reporting to the office and who's not. For coronavirus updates from the city of Birmingham, please visit birminghamal.gov/coronavirus. In addition to that, one more thing we've done as a city that has established a text message system to keep our residents informed of developments of the COVID-19. We need you to sign up to receive information for text by the keyword in all caps, BHM COVID. Again, that's all caps, BHM COVID, one word, and text that to 888-777. Again, that's in all caps, BHM COVID at 888-777. There's also a Spanish language text system as well. Please use in all caps BHM COVID-19. That's BHM COVID 19 to 888-777. I have an additional note, Mr. President and Council. Many of you all, as I text you all last night, and then in addition to that, as I've made phone calls to majority of you, outside of the ones I didn't have a chance to talk to in person last night, that when the health department triggered what they were going to do around how people move about certain small business established within our city, right away that caused a ripple in our city. And I know I left here probably a little after 8 p.m. last night. I know legal as well as the finance department stayed well after that. There are some scenarios that not only will be harmful to our small business owners, will not only be harmful to our hourly workers who work at those small businesses, and when I say our, I'm referring to our residents, but this also has a negative effect for our city coffers. And so what we have before us is not only a health crisis, but here just locally for us as a city, how we operate, and for our local economy, we're now, this will cause economic hardship and possibly an economic crisis that we will tend to stave off. Part of that is, at some point during this public meeting today, I hope there is time for you all to listen to Lester Smith, who's head of the finance department for the city of Birmingham, to not only break down some of that information to you that they've been working on last night, but present it to you too, and present some what we believe is some viable options to make sure we can continue to produce and provide services for the city and take care of city employees.
Are there questions? Let me see the speakers. Okay. No questions for the mayor? Are we good? Mr. Mayor, you'll let us know when you're ready for that. Okay. All right. All right. Do we have any presentations on our end from Clerk will move to the consent agenda.
Okay, the consent agenda starts on page 2 with item number 2, and on page 4 we go to item 3. Page 5, we have items 4, 5, and 6 on consent. And we skip over page 5, we had page 6, items 7 and 8 on consent. Page 10, item number 9 is on consent. Page 14, item 10 is on consent. Page 15, we have items 11 and 12 on consent. Page 17, items 13 and 14 are on consent. Page 18, items 15, 16, and 17 are on consent. Page 19, items 18, 19, and 20 are on consent. Page 20, we have items 21, 22, and 23 on consent. Page 21, items 24, 25, and 26 are on consent. Page 22, items 27, 28, and 29 are on consent. Page 23, items 30, 31, 32, and 33 are on consent. Page 24, items 34, 35, and 36 are on consent. Page 25, we have items 37, 38, and 39 on consent. Page 26, we have items 40, 41, 42, and 43 on consent. Page 27, items 44, 45, and 46 are on consent. Page 28, items 47 and 49 are on consent. Page 29, items 50 and 51 are on consent. Page 30, we have items 54, 55, 56, and 57 on consent. Page 31, we have items 58, 59, and 60 on consent. Page 32, we have items 61 and 62 on consent. Page 33, items 64 and 67 are on consent. On page 34, items 68, 69, 70, 71, and 72 are on consent. Item 73 should be withdrawn from the agenda. Page 35, we have items 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, and 79 on consent. Page 36, items 80, 82, 83, 84, and 85 are on consent. Item 81 should be withdrawn from the agenda. Page 37, we have items 86, 87, 88, and 89 on consent. On page 38, items 90, 91, and 92 are on consent. On page 39, we have item number 93 on consent. Page 40, we have items 97, 98, 99, and 100 on consent. Page 41, we have items 101, 102, 103, and 104 on consent. And that concludes the consent agenda. Now we have 2 addendum items.
And both of those consent
Or
items too.
consenting at the moment. That's correct.
All right, we'll start. Dr. O'Quinn, you want to go left or right? We'll go this way and then we'll come back and we'll go down front.
All right. I'd like to add items 66. See what page that is.
33.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
It's on page 33.
All right, so number 66 added to consent on page 33, and then items 94, 95, and 96 on page 39. And that's I know.
We're gonna go this way and we'll come back.
Well, first I wanted to remove items 49, 50, and 51 from the consent agenda. And I would both on page 28 and 29, remove items 49, 50, and 51. has on page 28, item 49 removed from consent, and on page 29, items 50 and 51 removed from consent. Then I wanted to ask, did we add item 52 to consent on that same page?
We can, if you,
I would
Okay.
like to add item 52
okay, that's fine.
and 53
Okay,
on that same page.
okay. Is that everything, or,
Yes, that's everything for now.
okay. Counselor Smitherman, and we'll just keep going. Counselor Hoyt, here.
Yeah, if we could take item 89 off consent, that's on 37. If we could take item 62 off consent, that's on page 32.
Microphone.
Yes, I did turn it on. Yes, I'm sorry. If you can go to someone else, because I
Okay, all right, we'll come back. Counselor Woods, we'll go here, and then we'll go down. Okay. Counselor Williams, and then we'll go to Counselor
Can
here,
we add,
President Pro Tem.
thank you. Can we add item 65? Can we take off item 88 and 90, please?
You want to add 65, okay, and then you want to take off which ones?
88 and 90, that's page 37 and 38.
88 and 90, okay. All right. Counselor Hilliard and President Pro Tem
What were
Alexander.
those last, the ones we
I'm
took
sorry.
off?
88 and 90, so that's page 37 and page 38.
88 and 90.
Okay. Counselor Hilliard, President Pro Tem Alexander. Okay. All right.
Motion to pass.
Second.
had another,
Okay, and I have to read my script, but,
I had another item, but I can't.
okay, go ahead. I'm sorry, we forgot to come back to you. Yes, sir. Ms. Abbott, Ms.
Oh,
Abbott.
yes, 90.
You want that on or off?
Which one?
90 on page 38.
Okay.
That one you want off? Okay. All right. Okay. All items designated as consent are routine and non-controversial and will be approved by one motion. No separate discussion of these items will be permitted unless a council member, the mayor, or citizen interested in a public hearing so request. If so, such items will revert to its normal place on the agenda order of business. All matters of permanent operation will be read. All other matters will be announced by reading the item number only. All public hearings will be announced. All right, we're ready for a vote. Mr. Clerk. Okay.
Councilmember Hilliard, Councilmember Hoyt,
Yes.
that vote should be up.
Okay, that consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. First item up.
Should be item 1, an ordinance amending the City of Birmingham zoning ordinance Title 1, General Provisions, filed by the Department of Planning, Engineering, and Permits, and the hearing of all interested parties. Case number ZAC 2019-39.
Councilor Hoyt. Handle this one, sir. This is item number 1. It's dealing with the zoning that was, you all were familiar with it, so. I know, but this one is one that you had handled, so we'll.
Okay, Mr. Gambrell, you want to present this item, please?
Yes, sir. This is ZAC 2019-39, and it is a citywide text amendment to the city zoning ordinance. The recommended text changes to the city zoning ordinance modify guidelines for automobile parking structures. Planning staff has reviewed the standards for automobile parking structures and proposed conditions for automobile parking structure uses that will allow those structures to have some ground floor retail, restaurant, or office space. Also, the proposed conditions for automobile parking uses incorporate facade standards that will allow it to fit into an urban context. These amendments will affect all properties within the corporate city limits of Birmingham. No properties will be rezoned as a result of this ordinance. At its regular scheduled meeting on December 4, 2019, Planning Commission voted to recommend approval of this ordinance change. And its regular scheduled meeting on February 12, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Committee likewise voted to recommend this change. I'll just make a few comments about these text changes here. As you know, we're currently under a moratorium for mini storage, and as we were looking at that, we were saying, hey, parking structures basically do the same thing that mini storage does, and so we really need to include some regulations for parking structures. And so the main things that we're focused on here with this new ordinance change is access. If you're going to build a parking deck downtown, then you really need to access that deck from an alley or from the rear. We don't want to have curb cuts at the street edge. We prefer that access to take place at the alley. And so this requires that under certain circumstances. You can vary from that, but the focus is access from the alley. The second thing is activation of that first floor space. Just like we talked about mini storage, a parking deck downtown creates this dead zone in the middle of a block, and we want to avoid that. So what we're asking with this ordinance, we'll be asking folks in the future, if they build a parking deck, that first floor is one of three things. It's either activated as a retail or a restaurant or an office space, or it's built in a way that it can be readily done so. So that in the future, as market conditions change, those spaces can be utilized and activate the street. And then the third thing is the idea about these things fitting into urban context. We know kind of generally what parking garages look like normally, and they're really not very pretty. They're typically kind of brutalist looking structures made out of concrete. And so what we want to do with these standards is require that in order for them to fit into the urban context, their facade would be treated similarly to buildings that are adjacent to them. There's some other facade standards in there about window placement and kind of the organization of the building and sort of what it looks like from the street edge. And then I guess one other thing to mention is that these conditions only apply in kind of our downtown core districts. So this is really meant for downtown. Of course, that's typically where parking decks are built. And so this is meant for the B3, the B4, the mixed-use high, mixed-use downtown, as well as industrial districts that are located within commercial revitalization districts or historic districts. And so we could get into the details of this thing as much as you like, but those are kind of my comments in general about what this ordinance text change does. And I think it'd be really beneficial for the city to have, and I think most people are probably familiar, a really good example of a deck that would be similar, that would follow these standards, is the one that's located on the northwest quarter of 4th Avenue North and 21st Street. That was the last Birmingham Parking Authority deck that was built. I don't know if you're familiar with that deck, but I know we showed photographs to the P&Z committee of that one. And basically, the first floor is 20 feet so that the facade can be punched out and retail can be placed in there. They're advertised as retail spaces currently. And then the building, as you go up, has a brick veneer and has windows, and so it looks like a building. I think the primary access for this one comes off of an alley off of 5th Avenue North. But with that, I would entertain any questions.
Any member of the public wish to speak to this issue? Either for or against? Any member of council? Council Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quickly, you mentioned some information about the entrance being in the alleyway.
Yes, sir.
Is that something that is in this?
Yeah, so there, if you turn to, well, they don't have page numbers, great. But if you turn to the second to the, or the third to the last page.
Is there a number?
It doesn't have a page number, unfortunately.
No, I mean like an item number.
It's under section 3, be it ordained, and this is where we create these standards for automobile parking. It's item E, it says automobile parking.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to see what portion of this speaks to the entrance.
Right, and that would be, I believe it's contained under that item E.
And I mean, I may be missing it, but everything I'm seeing is more aesthetic in nature.
Do we need to? Do we need to table this matter and come back?
Well, I think what would be best would be to adopt it as is, and then add that the access at a later date. Because I don't see it either, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah, I'm good with it as is.
Mr. Council Hoyt, I was just asking a question. Council Hoyt is in charge of this meeting, this item.
Yes, Madam Abbott, Council.
In E, under automobile parking, it does say down in B, frontage facade standards, main entrance must be in frontage facade or of principal frontages.
Yeah,
Is
but
that the main entrance to any office space, or is that
Yeah,
the
that's-
main entrance to the parking deck?
That's
for
entrance for
cars?
people. That's entrance to the building for people.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think if we move forward with it as is, I just had some concerns if there were some requirements around.
Yeah, I apologize. It's not in here, unfortunately. But I think, like I said, it would be ideal for us to go ahead and adopt this as is, and then come back with a minor amendment that would include the access standard.
Council Hoyt, this is,
Any other questions? Any other concern? Yes, Councilor Quinn.
So, if this is approved today, when would the standards go into effect?
It'll go into effect once it's signed by the mayor and advertised.
Okay,
It has to be advertised in the paper for it to be fully in effect.
okay. And projects in progress, would it impact those as well?
It would depend on whether or not they have a building permit.
Okay, thank you.
I would, if we could get just some additional information around when you bring back that next piece around whether some feedback from, like what that looks like in actuality, trying to implement.
As far as the access goes?
Right, requiring that access in alleyways. and
Yeah,
the
we basically
feasibility
give
of that.
3 options. It's either from the alley, if there is no alley, as close to an alley or what would be an alley as possible, or as determined by the traffic engineer. So those are the 3 options, but the first option is always going to be the alley. And if there's something you can't use the alley for some reason, then the traffic engineer would have to determine what those options would be.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. If no other question, I turn it back over to the president.
Okay. All right, thank you. Just real quick, when do you anticipate those additional concerns?
I'm
Within
gonna-
the next month or so? We should.
Yeah, I'll submit it today.
Okay, okay, all right. That's fine. All right. Council Woods, you good?
Mr. President, I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
have one other
Okay.
question that I'd like to ask Mr. Gambrell. If you drive through downtown Birmingham and you ever drive down an alley, you notice that vehicles and all kinds of junk is out in the alley. So if we require parking decks to be accessed from alleys, does that mean we're going to change our ordinances to keep people from parking permanently all day in alleys and blocking them with extraneous stuff?
Yeah, well, I think the alleys are supposed to be free and clear to a certain
not,
dimension.
so-
I don't know exactly what that dimension is. I think majority of alleys are free and clear. I think there are, locations where there are dumpsters. Typically, if a dumpster is in an alley, I think typically it would be best if it had a right-of-way use agreement. But yeah, alleys are supposed to be free and clear.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of cars and trucks that are parked in our alleys, so they're not exactly free and clear, unless you have a
Well,
really
to a certain
small
distance.
car.
I don't think the entire width of it has to be free and clear, but I think there's a certain distance for a vehicle to pass.
Okay, thank you.
All right, good. Any other questions, concerns? All right, Mr. Clark.
I need a motion, sorry. Item is before vote. Councilors Hoyt, O'Quinn, okay, thank you, Councilor Woods.
Okay.
That vote should be up.
All right, that item passes. Next item, Mr. Clark.
Next, we
Please.
should be at item 48, which is on page 28. A resolution assenting to the vacation of 64,404 square feet of Powell Avenue and 14,612 square feet of 25th Street South on behalf of Tom E. Stevens. Owners, so that the owner can consolidate the property into two lots in the hearing of all interested parties, case number SUB 2019-97. Motion, please.
Second.
All right. Counselor Smith?
Would you like to present the item?
Sure thing. This is case subdivision 2019-97, and it is a resolution to determine whether the city council will give its assent to the vacation of the following 64,404 square feet of Powell Avenue and 14,612 square feet of 25th Street South, so that the owner can consolidate the property into two lots, and whether such vacation will deprive other property owners of such right as they may have to egress and ingress for their property. The 1/3 right-of-way vacation fee has been set at $121,182.77. On January 8, 2020, the Subdivision Committee of the Birmingham Planning Commission recommended the approval of this vacation to the full council, and on February 4, 2020, the Public Improvement Beautification Committee forwarded this vacation to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak for or against this item?
I'm here as a representative for the item.
Okay. Can you state your name?
Sure. Jason Stuckey, and I represent TESC LLC and 2500 First Avenue LLC, and I filed the petition for vacation.
Yes, sir. Do you have anything you would like to say about the item?
Yes, just that these are two pieces of roadway that have been basically abandoned for decades and crisscrossing the property. And this is really going to be beneficial to that entire green space that connects all the way to Railroad Park, and there are interested parties to come in that want to improve the space from what it's being used as now, which is industrial.
Thank you. Anybody from the council?
You're with him. Okay. I just know y'all were. Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to
All
turn
right.
over to the president.
All right, thank you. Counselor Smithman. All right, we're ready for a vote. Mr. Clark.
Councilors Hilliard and Hoyt. That vote should be
Okay,
up.
that item passes. if you'll, that item passes, item 48. If you can call up 49, 50, 51 all together.
Item 49, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a construction right-of-way agreement between the city of Birmingham and Lamar Outdoor Advertising, wherein the city will permit Lamar to enter onto 1938 Avenue North for the purpose of raising the sign frame located on the back of Boutwell Auditorium. Costs incurred as a result of this agreement will be the responsibility of Lamar, with no expenditure from the city. Item 50 on page 29, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a construction right-of-way agreement between the city and Lamar Outdoor Advertising, wherein the city will permit Lamar to enter onto 1801 17th Street North for the purpose of cutting down and removal of a tree located on the property. All costs incurred as a result of this agreement will be the responsibility of Lamar, with no expenditure from the city. And item 51, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a construction right-of-way agreement between the city of Birmingham and Lamar Advertising, wherein the city would permit Lamar to cut down a tree located at 1801 17th Street North, which, due to new ramp construction, obscured the view of one of his existing outdoor signs, and in return for the removal of the referenced tree, Lamar, at his expense, will raise the sign from frame attached to the back of the Boutwell Auditorium, which, due to the new ramp, is currently totally obscured. All costs incurred as a result of this agreement will be the responsibility of Lamar, with no expenditure from the city. Motion on all items, please.
Move the items.
Second. Councilor Abbott.
Yeah, Mr. President, I would move at this time for a 1-week delay. Although we have visited the tree and now we know the situation, I think that we have other things that are probably more important. So if we just delay this for a week, we can talk about it next week.
All right. There is a motion and I think the second for that. So we're ready to vote on the 3 items for a 1-week delay.
Council, hear you out. That vote should be up.
Those items, the item passed with a 1-week delay. All right, next item.
Okay, we should be going to item, looks like 62, which is on page 32. A resolution approving and authorizing the mayor to execute a building commodities agreement with Regional Planning Commission of Greater Birmingham, under which the RPCGB, at a total project cost of $295,000, will perform services required for the development of the Southern Area Framework Plan, with a building communities grant to fund 80% of the total project cost, $236,000, and pursuant to the building commodities agreement, the city will provide a local match in the amount of $59,000. Motion, please.
I move approval.
It's before us. Councilor Hoyt, did you have a question? I think on that one. No, 62. Which one are you talking?
62 of us, the framework plan.
Yeah, I was just trying to see, is this citywide?
Southern area. Southern area framework plan.
Okay. So what is the southern area, if somebody can explain?
It's the
Mr. Mayor,
last part of the framework plan for the
on the
comprehensive plan. You know, all the other parts of the city have been done except the south.
Okay. Oh, so it's your plan?
Part of my part's ongoing,
Okay.
and it's several of us
Okay.
that are involved in it.
Okay. All right. So we're good? We're good? Okay. All right, we're ready to vote. Item 62. Okay. Okay, that item passes. Next item.
Should be item 63, a resolution accepting the 1%. Let me make sure that I had to change the language on the synopsis. You should have a updated item, a revised item. A resolution accepting the 1% cost of living allowance that has been approved for the fiscal year 2019 to 2020 for all applicable employees of the city, retroactively effective from the pay period that began on June 22nd, 2019. And
Because
the revision should have been passed out.
Yeah, I saw the revisions. If you can call up the other items dealing with, item 63, there was, we took some other items off, I think. Item 88 and 90. If you could call those up as well.
Item 88. A resolution accepting the unit price bid of Russo Corporation, 1421 Mims Avenue, Southwest Birmingham, in the amount of $3,532,838.32 for the 6th Avenue Drainage Project. This being the lowest and best bid submitted, authorized the mayor to enter into a contract with said Russo Corporation in substantially the form contained within the bid documents. In accordance with said bid, providing that the total compensation payable under the contract not exceed the appropriation. And then item 90, a resolution accepting the lump sum bid of Stone Building, LLC, 3232 11th Avenue North, Birmingham, in the amount of $4,361,000 for the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame, Carver Theater, new work package rebid, this being the lowest and best bid submitted, and authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with Stone Building LLC and substantially the form contained within the bid documents and in accordance with said bid, providing that total compensation payable under the contract not exceed the appropriation.
Okay, is there a motion to bring it up? Okay, Councilor Williams, Councilor Smitherman. Mr. Mayor.
Can you all hear me? Yes, sir. I'm not sure why these items have been in a lump sum. I haven't been privy to any conversation the legislative body is having. But what I would say is that this body agreed through vote last week to move these items based on two reasons. Employees wouldn't have been caught up in politics, and these other projects had a deadline, and if we missed the bid and they close, these projects will increase again with no additional funding available. I'm not sure what's going on, but I want to put that on the record. If these projects aren't passed today and the bid closes, that will lay at the feet of this legislative body. And when you all say that why this project's not complete, I'm going to say when it was presented to you, you punted. I'm not sure of any additional money to find for these projects. This is the window. In addition to that, I don't think our employees' cost of living adjustment should be a part of this conversation.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
I'm just a little confused. Very confused. Because, so let me just start here on 63. So we approved in the last budget to give them 1%. We are here in mid-year in another year, and then we want to make it retroactive to that time. Is that what I'm understanding? I'm sorry. Is that what I'm understanding?
Would you repeat? I'm
I'm
saying
just,
yes to that. Yes, if you're asking me, yes.
okay. And this would be retroactive from July, I guess from June, you're saying, right?
Yes, sir. It says pay period beginning June 22nd, 2019.
Because, and I guess I'm confused because you all just had a budget workshop or whatever and talked about a surplus, and you know, and the mid-year is to deal with actuals, as I understand it. So how many other items or amendments that we made to the budget at that point that have not been satisfied? I would need to know that. Because what is happening, I do believe, is that some of these projects are being called back because we have not kept our word in terms of how we unfold these projects. I mean, and notwithstanding the Hall of Fame. I mean, what is it? The Carver Theater, and because that money has been there for a minute. Shouldn't take that long for these projects to move. So I'm just confused. So somebody explain item 63 to me.
May I add something to 63? Mr. President, from the standpoint of the language for the synopsis, to my understanding, the new revised resolution actually did not have the retroactive information in it. That's the revision. Wait a minute. There's some language, Nicole. There's still some language in there.
Okay. So
There's still some.
I was trying to let Council Hoyt finish, and now we're going.
It's still language
I'm
in
just, I'm over, maybe somebody else can weigh in.
Okay, President Pro Tem Alexander. Okay, I was, okay. We'll just go left to right. Councilor Smitherman, Councilor Abbott, Dr. Quinn, have anything? We'll just go.
I'll ask you a question.
Okay.
So, I think probably what's on all of our minds at the moment is that, last or 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a $12 million surplus.
Okay.
And, the world has changed dramatically in the last 2 weeks. So it's very likely that we're entering in a situation where that surplus may have just disappeared. So I think we have to now consider the reality that we're in with regards to utilizing what was a surplus. I mean, is that in fact going to be a surplus in this fiscal year? That's just my comment.
So let's, I guess, do we want to have some conversations about this, or you want to table a motion, or Mr. Mayor, you want to hear from get our report, I guess?
We have no problem with your report. That still doesn't deny the current projects that are before you need to be passed, voted up, or voted down today based on the window that they're in. That's separate from the remaining surplus. That's separate from all these other accounts we look forward to presenting to you all today.
Okay, are you finished?
Well, I just wanted to ask a follow-up question. These items would be approving the bids for Carver Theater and for the 6th Avenue Drainage Project. That doesn't commit us to expending those funds, does it? Or my question is, does accepting these bids commit us to spending those funds at this time?
Yes, and we should. That's the point is we should. These projects have been before you for quite some time. What you all approved last week was to close the funding gap, so the bid wouldn't close again, and then the project would increase price again, and we wouldn't have the necessary funding, and we would have to wait another year, and then the money would increase again.
All right, so Councilor Smitherman.
I think it's more so a comment. I think for item 63, I don't mind voting on it, but I don't mind delaying my project because of the crisis of COVID-19. Because I think it's very important that we take care of everyone right now. And I know it'll be an increase in cost, but I can't be selfish enough to want my project to pass when we need that money to help everyone out.
Okay. Councilor Abbott, you good before I go over here, or you want me to come back?
Well, no, I'm not good.
Okay, no, I'm saying, did you want to speak now, or did you?
I can wait.
Okay,
But I do have questions.
Yes, ma'am. I'll go to Councilor Woods, and then we'll come back.
First is in reference to item 63, in reference to the revised piece. Now, does removing that retroactive piece reduce the amount needed for the COLA?
No.
Why not?
Just get their entire 1% between today and June 30th.
Secondly, I don't think 63 needs to be lumped in with 88 and 90. I think we do need to take those separately. I think
That was fine. It was just all dealing with everything that was taken off. It was just, let's just bring them all.
Yeah, I mean,
that was the sense with
Yeah.
everybody taking it off, was to, we can separate all of them.
Well, I think this one is different than those other two. Like I said, we want to have some conversation around that. Kind of as Councilor Smitherman hinted at, I think there's room to do that. But I think, all of us kind of made that commitment to the employees that if it was doable, we would do it. And I think we need to stick to that piece. But I would like some more information on the financial piece of where, I guess, why was the change? Why was it revised?
Because legally you have to go forward. You can't go backwards. The 1% is for the fiscal year. So at any point in time within the fiscal year, as long as we satisfy the commitment we made to them,
Okay.
which is dated for today.
And so this would be intended to be paid out between now and the remainder of the fiscal year, or in a lump sum?
Paid out.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, I want to go down here. Council Hilliard, President Pro Tem Alexander, you're good. I'm just gonna kind of go back to Council Abbott. I'm just, those that hadn't had a chance. Council Abbott, since you hadn't spoken on this item, do you have comments, and then we'll go
Well,
back around again?
yeah, in looking at item 63, yes, we do want to help our employees, but as Dr. O'Quinn said, a lot has changed in the last 2 weeks. And suddenly I'm looking at our revenues and wondering where they're going to be in the next few months.
Mr. President.
We base our revenues on projections of what we think is going to happen in the future. Well, the future has suddenly changed for all of us. We don't even want to get too close to each other now. So things have changed. So, I'm just thinking, is the timing of this wise, in that we're talking about some other things where we need a few million here and a few million there. Councilor Smitherman is very generous to say that her project can be put on hold, but when the flooding occurs at that location, people's cars are underwater. And so it's a pretty serious problem that's been put off and put off and put off and put off. We've had a flooding problem for a long time in that location. Sometimes it turns into a lake that actually has whitecaps on it when the wind blows. So, that is a project that I don't think putting it off is going to help anybody, and it could even make things worse. Admittedly, the Carver Theater, it is a very important thing, but is it so important that we need to spend $4.3 million right now when we don't know what's going to be happening? So I'm just having these thoughts because of all of this just amazing amount of stress and unsettled feelings that are coming with this pandemic that we're in. So those are just some thoughts that are going through my mind here as we're looking at this. We have to do the landfill. We have no choice there. And these other things, we know if we rebid them, we're in trouble because the price keeps going up and up. But I am so concerned about our revenues and the effect of the closure of all these businesses. And the federal government's looking at a stimulus package, but the federal government has to get up there and fight with each other for a long time before they can make a decision. So, I'm looking at these things and wanting to proceed, but it's that uncertainty that we're in the midst of right now with this pandemic.
Okay, Are you finished? Because
I am.
For right now, I'll
I
come
know
back to you.
I know I'm rambling. I'm very much aware of that fact, but that's because all of this is just so overwhelming to all of us, and the what it's going to do to the city of Birmingham is overwhelming.
Yes, ma'am. So what I'm gonna do is Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir. And then we'll come back over.
As fluid as this is, there's a lot of the conjecture that's being made. If you all will allow the financial, the head of the finance department to actually present to you all, there's a balance in striking what you all have already approved last week, and adjusting for economic stimulus, COVID-19, as well as city services. If on the floor we're saying we may need to table these things because we don't know where we are, I think at the beginning of the meeting I told you all he's going to present where we are. But I think it would be very premature right now in this conversation to delay these items.
Okay.
Based on the reason why you all approved them last week, is counter to based of what you did last week. With enough funding available, not just for those projects, but for everything else.
Okay. So are you finished? So what I think we do is let's table these items until the end of the meeting. We can hear the report, and then we can go from there.
Yes.
So as a motion to table
So move.
the three items.
I'd like to.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Performing action. Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to ask councilors, I believe the first question we had as a council is why were these items bundled when we approved them separately before? And I guess I do not understand.
Oh, no. We can separate them. I was just asking them to be called all up at one time since different people had asked that they all.
Point of clarification, was our vote at that time going to be for each item separately, or when we were calling for the vote, would they have been all for one, all of them together?
No, we could have separated. We just wanted to bring so all conversations could have been had about all the different projects. We take 63 up as standalone, but when different council members were taking them off, the sense was the conversation was going to go several, not only just the employee raise, but also the different projects and the funding sources. That's why I called them up, so it could be a conversation across the board, but we'll take them individually. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, second.
Yes, ma'am.
I also would like to consider that as a council, as we listen to these items, what I'm hearing, I heard first that of course we're in difficult times. We don't know the future. What was presented to us at the time, though, is we were dealing with a surplus. So if now we're questioning what will our revenues be as a result of going through this difficult time, of course we want to keep that in our minds as we prove these items forward. But I do want to caution us, I don't want to start cherry picking on items and what's for my district or what's for here is not, we're not considering it as a whole. We looked at these items, we felt that these items were important based on different reasons. So I guess I'm still and I will wait until we get the rest of the discussion, but I'm just having some difficulty in why we had to pull back on these items to begin with, and just want to hear more about what we're going to do for businesses, but in relationship to item 63, this also helps homes and this helps families. And this is monies that these families did not know that they would have an opportunity to receive until we saw the $12 million in surplus. And we did not give this in our last budget. So I just like for us to think about that as we move forward. We have families out there that are being affected, and these are our employees. And I'd like for us to give consideration to that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, ma'am. We're just gonna hold on. Are we just gonna move to table?
Can I get some clarity?
Okay, you will. Let me just figure out where we are at this point. We'll bring them back individually and discuss them if you want to individually. We're simply saying, I think from listening to what the mayor said, we're going to table them till later on in the meeting, receive the financial report, and then we will come back and act accordingly, individually items. 63, and so on. So is that a good pathway? Everybody is comfortable with that?
Can we go ahead and consider 63?
We can do that now if you want to.
And
Y'all are good with
table
that?
item
We was gonna
Well,
wait till.
I have questions.
Okay,
about that.
hold on. Okay, so you finished asking? You finished?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back. You want to take up 63 now?
Yeah.
All right, so what we're going to do, Councilor Hoyt, you had something, and then we're going to come back.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was just, if in fact we are talking about this being retroactively to June, if we had passed this in June and the folks had already realized their 1%, then what's the difference than us retroactively considering this to June, because it would have been money that we would have accounted for the budget.
We didn't pass it in June.
We didn't pass in June.
We didn't put it in the budget, and so we've taken it out of the surplus when surplus came available, and so we basically passed it last week, or approved it last week. Initially.
Now, I didn't make the financial meeting, so did we verify all of this surplus? Were they
Yes, sir.
certified?
Well, we received a report from the finance department, and the item was before us on the agenda, so I would say yes, it was certified based on the information that was submitted, and it came from the finance department, so yes. So here's what I'm hearing, and let's just is that 63 will stand alone. The other two, we need to look at after we receive the report from the finance department. Is that the sense I'm getting up here from Councilor Smithman? Let me just.
Really, okay, so what Councilor Abbott says, I probably should take that one. I think the 6th Avenue drainage is important because, like she said, it is environmental. That has been an issue for a long time. I'm just saying if it had to come to it, but I'm not saying, I do want it passed. But I'm just putting it out there that I know I am being considerate of this crisis, but I do think this is something that needs to be passed because, it's nasty under there.
You've been advocating for that for a while. We
I
understand
just
that.
wanted to say that I'm
I
not saying
understand.
I don't want it to pass. I'm just saying I'm considerate of the emergency.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, I got it. All right, so where are we with, everybody's had a chance to speak? Dr. Quinn, everybody? So now.
Can I speak to Madam Pro Tem Alexander's statement she made? Can I speak to that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Madam President, Pro Tem, you mentioned about cherry-picking projects. I think you're going to see more of that. And I say that because I have a project that's been on the books for more than 3 years.
Councilor Hoyt, can we stay germane to?
Well, she mentioned this, and
Okay.
I don't need anybody to control my narrative.
I'm not trying to control your narrative. Okay.
Because the issue is, like Councilor Smitherman, I have projects that's been on there, and they're not $500,000 projects. It's a $300,000 project that has not been moved on by this administration, and it was in the budget. And then I saw in the budget book of all the projects that we didn't have. We got to find the money. The money is already found. It was an original budget that we did 2 years ago for the Greenway project in Bellevue Heights. So I don't want it to get to be a cherry picking kind of deal because it's not fair. It's not, and I want Ms. Smithman to get this bridge fixed. We got a whole lot of other stuff to be fixed too. So I'm gonna vote for your stuff today if we can. But I want you all to be reminded that we do have to take care of the entire city. We do. And so, but anyway, I'm gonna say that for another time, because I do want this project moving in my district. And I'm gonna send you all the pictures I sent the mayor with all these trucks parked on both sides of the street. And the longer we don't address this $300,000 project, now, you know, I've been down here, we moving $1 million, $5 million, $2 million, now $4 million, and we can't move a $300,000 project, and it's the city's right away. Come on.
Okay.
Don't play
Mr. Mayor?
games.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Very kind of you, Mr. President and Council. I was hoping your colleague was going to add that in conversation extensively with the neighborhood president of Bellevue Heights.
Mr. Mayor?
This project,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr.
if you
President,
would-
this
okay.
project has 6 parcels at play. 4 of them haven't complied. 2 will have to go and enact the eminent domain process, which will require a legal process in our civil court system. This is not a money issue. This is a eminent domain situation that has been thoroughly explained to the neighborhood leadership of Bellevue Heights.
Okay. All right. Councilor Hoyt, hold on. No, hold on, Mr. Councilor Hoyt. Come on now. I'm just
But
trying.
this is not a new issue.
Councilor Hoyt, just.
On that 2 years ago. It don't take that long. But that's by design.
Okay. I was gonna make a statement, Councilor Hoyt, and then I was gonna recognize
Right,
you.
well, help me out, President. I need some hope.
I understand that, but if everybody's gotta be courteous around here, okay?
All right, I
All
hear
right.
you.
Yes, sir. All right. Where we are now, how do y'all want to proceed? You want to take up 63 now, or are we gonna wait until after the financial report, or are we gonna move and table all 3 and then we'll get a financial report from the mayor and his team? So that's where we are right now. Council Hoyt, y'all think about it. Council Hoyt, recognize you and then we're going to come back and give y'all a minute and let's figure out how we're going to move forward. Council Hoyt?
Yeah, well, and I hope that in the report that we have current conditions. We had a stock market that dropped at 3,000 yesterday, and so I'm hoping as we consider this financial information from the Director of Finance, that we need to talk to the financial advisor for the city. There needs to be a report from him to see where we are and what could we expect, and so he could certify that, because you know, some of this investment the city has is predicated on current market. So we need to understand it in its totality.
Okay, so let me just make sure. What we'll do is, after we hear from the mayor and Director Smith, we will also, in addition to that, ask for a written report
From the financial advisor.
We'll request all that in writing, and so from the financial team, we'll request that in writing. Is that okay, Councilor Hoyt?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay. All righty. Cool. All right. Now, here's where we are. Item 63. Is there a motion? We're going to bring that up. 63. Do y'all want to? We're going to take that as a separate item from the other 2, or you want to take them all individually, or you want to wait until after we hear a report from the financial from the mayor? We just need to hear motions. I'm not. We're going to recognize Dr. Quinn, Councilor Smithman. Go ahead.
Are we making a motion?
Well, I was going to come to you. I was going to come. They were recognized. I don't know if there's going to be an emotion, but I'm going to come to you, President Pro Tem.
Mr. President, my personal preference would be to hear the report on our financial situation, before we make these allocations. So I concur with you in that we should table items 63, 88, and 90 until we have the opportunity to hear from our Director of Finance,
And your
how
financial
we
advisor.
can, what's our financial position and how we can get these things done or not. That's a motion.
Third.
So,
Okay.
and this is to get that information, right?
No, we're just, this is
Motion to table.
this is just a table.
Hey, okay.
To the end of the meeting,
Okay, very good.
Right.
and then we're gonna
President
move back up.
Just
That
table
motion
until
be-
we can
Okay,
get the report.
all right. The items have been tabled.
That's a stimulus package right there.
Those 3 items have been tabled. Chief, we'll wait. Okay, y'all ready for the report? Okay, all right. While we're waiting on, do we need to? Okay.
This is really hard because we don't know what's gonna happen to our finances. And it's really scary. I stayed awake last night worrying about this.
All right, while we're, no, just, trying to see, Ms. Carter, is there any other little item we can read? Okay, you're ready now? Okay. All right. We need motion to suspend for presentation.
So moved.
All right,
All opposed?
okay. All right.
I'll yield the floor.
Lester Smith, and I serve as the Finance Director for the City of Birmingham.
Good morning, how you doing?
Good morning, I'm doing
Good
well.
morning. We're just trying to get an assessment where we are, just however you want to kind of go through things. You want to make some comments? You want us to kind of ask questions? Okay, that's fine.
So I'll go ahead and start. Do you want me to start as it relates to the main item that we have today? So the main item that I'm here to really discuss is the current issue that faces the City of Birmingham. If you recall earlier in the presentation today, the mayor mentioned that 1, we have a health crisis facing us, and then 2, we have an economic crisis. The thing that I want to discuss is tied to those 2 areas, but it's 3 separate components, okay? One of the areas that we want to discuss is a health crisis, and it's how the City of Birmingham addresses that health crisis with its first responders, primarily fire and police. The other component that we have as it relates to that is we don't know where the city will be in 10, 20, 30, much less 60 days. So one of the other items that we as a city has to look at is how do we mobilize our workforce? If something happens and all of a sudden we cannot come into City Hall, how do we keep City Hall running? That's on the health piece. The other item, which is the economic crisis, is broken down into 2 areas. One is the economic crisis and how it's impacting the overall budget of the City of Birmingham from an operational perspective. The second item as it relates to that is how is this impacting the small business community, which makes up a large percentage of our revenue dollars in the City of Birmingham, okay? We've got to be careful that we don't allow that base to continue to erode, because if it does, it will impact our revenue dollars. So as it relates to those 3 items, I'll start with the one that I think I've got the most concern over, and it's our first responders. As we all know, when we prepared the 2020 budget, we did not bake into that budget the current situation that we're faced with. If you look at just the last 2 viruses that we've had in this country, whether it be SARS or MERS, those cases that were reported, somewhere around 20% of the reported cases impact our healthcare workers. There was a report that was done in New York Times that when it discussed the impact to healthcare workers as it related to frequency, number of times that an individual is exposed to a potential case, and the proximity of those individuals to that case, paramedics actually ranked higher from an exposure standpoint than nurses. When you look at how the city of Birmingham operates with the fact that our firemen go out along with our paramedics, my biggest concern is that as a city, as it relates to our first responders, the fire department, and the police officers, is that if we do not have those individuals properly equipped, and for some reason, like the example or the occurrence that happened out in, I think it was Washington, where firefighters were exposed to the coronavirus, and all of a sudden, multiple of those firefighters had to be quarantined. Now all of a sudden, you're talking about our response time as it relates to situations being decreased, as well as it forces the city from an E91 perspective to start prioritizing calls. So one of the things that we looked at was, let's try to address how the city of Birmingham, from a first responders perspective, addresses this pandemic. So we got with the fire department, we got with the police department, we got with a few departments that actually act in support roles as it relates to equipment management, and we said, what do you see that you may need in order to handle this? I'll be honest with you, I have no point of reference. I've never been through a situation like this. So when you sit down and you try to quantify that cost, it's a guess. So a lot of the items that came back was supply cost. We figured that between the police and the fire, we're probably looking at maybe around $100,000 to $200,000 worth of costs that we need to make sure that they have the appropriate PP&E. One of the things that I've been reading about as it relates to, and Chief Moon can speak more to this, but as it relates to first responders is, the first responders who are in an environment, in a municipality in which resources are tight, they have a tendency to overuse their PPE to the point that all of a sudden it's not effective. So that was one of the things I wanted to make sure that they included in their request. Personal property equipment. So what I'm talking about here is masks, and those masks have to seal up perfectly. If you don't have the resources to replace those masks, then all of a sudden they have a tendency to use them to a point that now they've been compromised and you're susceptible to the virus. So where we're at right now is we're looking at personal protective equipment as it relates to maybe around $100,000. And then we've got the rest of this is predicated on overtime. The overtime that they calculated was a result of the increase in the current calls that they've expected. If you think about it, I think as of Friday we had one reported case in Jefferson County. We're now up to 29. Okay. If you go back and you look at SARS, I believe that the coronavirus eclipsed the number of cases of SARS in 52 days. So we have no idea what we are facing. So I just need you to understand that I don't have a lot of data to base these numbers on. The overtime is, as I mentioned, we're looking at probably around $4 to $5 million. I can give you the specific numbers. I'm recalling them from my head. But that is to do nothing more than have or pay for costs that we are anticipating that were not built in the 2020 budget. Okay? The other component of this is that as we move forward, we need to make sure that we've got enough money in the budget to mobilize our existing city employees so that they can work remotely. I've got money baked in the request of about $5 million for that. All inclusive for everything. I'll stop at this point and see if you have any questions. Correct. Do you have any questions as it relates to the health impact?
Well, I don't know. We'll start.
Just for the record, he's not done his presentation. That's just a portion of it.
Okay, well, we'll just wait, I guess, and then we'll just go ahead.
You ready to move on? So as you'll see on, you don't have it? Okay, I'm sorry. So what we're asking for the first responders is approximately $5 million. The next item that I know that everybody is curious about is where do we stand against our current budget? If you recall, we went into this year with budgeted revenues about $452 million. of the $452 million in revenue, as I presented at the Committee of the Whole, 81% of that revenue base was predicated in sales tax, use tax, occupational tax, and business license. As I look at the remaining 4 months going forward, I'm not really so much focused on business licenses. But if we look at those other three components, being occupational tax, sales tax, use tax, that comprises 75% of those dollars. When we sat down and I met with the Taxes and License Division, and I said, you know, about the only point of reference we had was going back to 2008 when you had the subprime mortgage market that crashed. The estimate was that given the makeup of our tax revenue, being small businesses, hotels, stuff of that nature, it was predicated that we could see as much as a 20% decline in our revenue base over the next 4 months. So what I did at this point in time, I said, okay, let's come in here, let's take 75% or 81% of our overall budget, $452, right? Now that 81%, 75% was attributable to sales, use, and occupational tax. So I took that balance, divided it by 12, right? And I multiplied it by 20%, and I said that's my exposure on a monthly basis. I then took that amount, which was roughly $4.5 million, and I said I'm calculating my potential estimated decline in revenue to be around $9 million. Okay? So when we look at this, the first thing that I would suggest is, okay, we've got to get expenses under control. Let's start there. And we are looking at that. What I need to remind everybody of is that when we look at expenses, 68% of our expenses is in personnel cost. There's another 4% that is in debt payments out of the general fund. Okay? That's got us up to 72%. There's another 8% that is tied to board and agencies. So that's 80%. So if you look at the remaining 20%, keep in mind that 20% goes to utilities and some other expenditures. Even if we could come in and we could cut 20% of those savings and save that over a 3-month period, that's only $4.5 million. So I don't think we're going to be able to offset this gap between revenues and expenses by trying to cut costs. I definitely think we need to look at that. I think there's some things that we can consider. We can look at travel. We can look at training. We can look at trying to control overtime for the non-police, fire, and Department of Public Works. But at some point in time, what we're going to have to do is look at revenue. And I've got nowhere to go to increase the revenue. So if that's the case, then I'm going to have to look at our funding source that we do have, which is possibly the general fund that we'll talk to later. So right there, if you think about it, what I'm looking for is 60 days. I have no idea how long this crisis will last. I know that if my memory serves me correctly, China started, I think, back in December. They're 4 months into it, basically. And I think things are maybe starting to level out. But I think if you go back to SARS carried on for about 7 months. So as we look at this, we just have to be very mindful of continuing to project and forecast, but also have an understanding of what resources we do have available to us. So right now I've touched on the healthcare issue. I've touched on one component of the economic crisis, which is the city of Birmingham. The second component of that is how this economic crisis is eroding our revenue base, specifically as it relates to small business. With that, I'll turn this piece over to Dr. Carpenter.
So, as you've seen, Dr. Lester Smith has just given you the 2 portions of where we are as it relates to the health crisis and what we need to do for our first responders as it relates to COVID-19. Second portion of this is related to the funding gap that will probably be created based on the loss of funding from sales tax, use tax, and occupational tax. Third thing, which is I think I was on the phone with you all or in person yesterday, which is Dr. Carpenter is getting ready to present to you all, is the economic stimulus package.
Yes, sir. Good morning, Council. So Bob Dickerson will be joining us shortly so he can answer questions on the fund. We're going to introduce a two-part stimulus package. As you all know, small businesses are the lifeblood of our community. They are the backbone of our economy, employing well over half of our community. They're the pride of our neighborhoods, and many of them are feeling under siege. We have, since I think last night, we posted a website called BeHamStrong.com to collect information from small businesses, and we've had about 70 people respond. Of that number, 70% expect layoffs over the next several days. We're getting text messages, emails, calls of people who are already losing their jobs. The bottom line is that small businesses depend on a variety of things, including events, foot traffic, and the economic vitality that we now have to be thoughtful about stopping, because it will, on the other side of it, we have to take draconian measures to prevent the spread of the disease. So I think for us, part of what we have to do is see this as an opportunity to bridge small businesses into a new economic environment through what is a really turbulent time. We have 5,997 small businesses, so businesses under 50 employees. That affects 47,000 workers, many of whom are in the food and beverage industry, and given the new public health orders, have already lost their jobs. So right now, our thoughts are with small business owners and how we can stabilize them, workers at those small businesses, and their families. So this stimulus package is broken up to focus on those groups. The first package, that part of the package you're going to see, is an emergency loan fund for small businesses. Mr. Bob Dickerson, with whom this council is very familiar, runs the Birmingham Business Resource Council, also leads the A.G. Gaston Conference every year, and truly is the city's expert on small businesses. He has volunteered a lot of his time to help us get through this period by providing emergency loans. Today, what the council is considering is an amendment to put $1 million into an emergency loan pool. There'll be $200,000 also from the IEO current budget, so a $1.2 million total emergency loan package. It is with great confidence that I can tell you, if this council were to pass a $1.2 million package, we think we can go get $1.2 million more dollars in the private sector, so that we can inject $2.4 million total into our small business economy. We believe that that could help us endure this difficult period. Most of the businesses that we're talking about this morning, there were 17 small businesses that had reported, and we were able to review that data. They reported collectively $800,000 in revenue lost. That's roughly about $40,000 per small business. You all know small businesses have tight margins, and when those margins shrink or they go in the red, they have to lay people off. That's what people are facing now, and I think we should share that concern with them and help make loans that would enable them to stay alive and stay afloat. So I'm happy to answer questions on that. I know Mr. Dickerson is here as well to answer questions on the loan structure and our rationale for doing it.
Something important we need to add as it relates to being under a city state of emergency, federal government state of emergency, and the state emergency.
So, Chancellor, as y'all know, that there's a current legislation that's before the Senate and up in D.C. about COVID-19. We're still hopeful that that money, as you see before you, we're coding it a special code for COVID-19 so we can seek reimbursement of these type of funds. So that's just, I just want to put that pin in there for you to understand. That's the way it's coded before you on that ordinance, that we are going to try to seek reimbursement from the federal government for these COVID-related expenditures.
Given the history of we have things of this magnitude, particularly with the disaster that happened in Inslee with the storm and all, we didn't move before the government declared that we were a disaster area, and those funds were made available from there to borrowing, I mean, that we could spend, because then that was an understanding that we could dispense the money with the understanding we get reimbursed. So has that been established? Because I hadn't seen anything that Congress had done up until this point.
It was established once the federal government declared a state of emergency.
Well, my question would be then, what is the federal government telling us they're gonna?
What they're gonna do?
They're gonna bring down, and how are we gonna access it, and how much is it going to be? And I just got endless questions.
Sure. So the amount that's been announced so far through executive order was a $50 billion stimulus from the Small Business Administration. What is not clear to us is how that money would actually get to the businesses in Birmingham, and more to the point, how it would get to them in time for them to stay open. So there's two pieces to that puzzle. One is that specific areas have to be considered disaster areas, so they have to be labeled disaster areas, not emergencies. Governors have to take that step. Right now, it appears that the State Department of Commerce is seeking data specifically on what small businesses are affected so that they can declare disasters. I'm proud to say that we were able to pretty quickly stand up a survey to gather that data as fast as possible. And to small business who are paying attention to this hearing, I would encourage you to go to bhamstrong.com and fill out that small business impact survey.
Let me add something, councils. This is very important. I know many of you, your thought is, why would we jump ahead of the federal government? I know it's in your brain. Here's the problem. Federal government is in no rush. They weren't in any rush with the health crisis. They're definitely not in a rush with the economic stimulus crisis. And as it relates to this, there is data here. Take out of your mind anywhere else in America, right here in our own city. For the survival sake of a small business is probably 14 days without cash flow. 14. You and I both know the federal government will not get any money to any city in America in the next 14 days. Sir?
So where is this? So I'm very confused now based on this, what we've just been handed. Where is the $1 million coming from?
So we can discuss the funding source. If you all are aware of the general fund was set aside in order to preserve at least 60 days of operating cash for the city of Birmingham. If you look at our budget and you just take our $452 million budget and divide it by 12 times 2, I think that comes up with somewhere around $75 million. Currently, that Birmingham fund has a little over 90 million. Excuse me, general fund has a little over $92 million in there, $93 million. So we have the capacity of using the differential between the 60-day reserve we have and what's currently in that fund to fund these items.
So let me clarify.
Yes, sir.
You used the word general fund and Birmingham fund interchangeably.
That was my error.
So
they're
the
two separate
Birmingham
items.
fund has $90 million in it, approximately.
Correct.
Give or take. And what we are required to have by Alabama state law is.
So that's something totally different. What we're talking about is the general fund here.
Yeah, let me clarify this. What's before you, even based on what Councilor Hoyt said, we're not talking about our rainy day account. All right,
Correct.
so just take that off the table.
And that's the Birmingham fund.
Yes.
Correct.
So
we're not discussing that.
Nothing
at all.
in this conversation
Okay.
for you in presentation requests has anything to do with the rainy day account. Nothing.
Okay. So my question is, where in the general fund is this $1 million coming from, and why is it now bulked into things like flight simulator, blah 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 blah?
Hey.
Well, no, I'm asking where this money is.
That's a valid question. So when I sat down and started doing the computation to determine what the excess was that was available, the first thing I did was back out those items that had already been discussed and requested. Okay, so I started with the general fund balance. I backed out those items that had already been discussed because I wanted to see, would we be left with enough residual once I backed out the 60 days of operating capital to fund the items that were being requested? And the answer was yes.
Okay.
Okay, so all of the items that we discussed from the surplus have been backed out. All
Yes.
12 million items. $12 million worth of items that we discussed from the surplus have been backed out?
That is
Understand
correct.
correctly?
The 7.9.
Okay.
So what you
Plus
all,
the additional 1.9.
what you all passed last week, which is before your individual items today, left 7.9 in surplus.
So with that being said,
So we put that back
Mr.
in here
Smith.
before you.
Mr. Smith, do you think that it's prudent for us as a city, when you just said that we need approximately $10 million and we don't know what our revenues are going to be and we've not been able to benchmark anything like this before, do you think it's prudent that we pass that $12 million surplus as stated from 2 weeks ago, given the uncertainty of what's going on?
So I think in order to answer that question, we have to look at the individual items. One thing we need to consider, I believe that there were 3 capital projects there. There was the Carver Theater, there was the 6th Avenue Viaduct, and then there was the landfill. The landfill, keep in mind, was $2.6 million. You choose not to do that, we're paying $200,000 a month because we do not have that landfill operational, okay? One other thing we need to consider is that the dollars that have been set aside for those projects can't be expended for general operating expenditures. Those are capital project dollars. So another way to look at this is if the city decides to move forward with those 3 projects, in essence what you're doing is you are keeping workers working. Does that make sense? Those dollars can't be used for the items that we're discussing right now as it relates to any of the COLA virus.
Hold on. That was surplus money. That was general fund money that was going to be transferred to the capital. So we can use, because it was general fund money. We were moving general fund surplus that was going to be transferred.
Let me clarify this though. Correct. If that money is not transferred, those projects cannot proceed.
But
Does
they
that make
can
sense?
be used for other things.
The
Okay.
excess can, yes.
Okay.
I stand
All right.
corrected
Just
and
wanna be-
apologize for
Okay,
that.
that's fine. Here's where we are.
He's done with his presentation.
Okay, I know, but I just wanted to comment real quick.
Too much discussion.
No. Hold on, Council Hoyt. Here's where we are, and I want Mr. Lesher to finish, but I want everybody to start thinking is that, listen, we're not going to solve this today. What I'm going to ask everybody to kind of think of is look at your calendar tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, even Sunday, to figure out some availability while we're going through this, and we're going to come back after the presentation to find to see what days we can have committee of the whole meeting and additional council meetings. So we just need to that's why I was just asking everybody, look at your calendars and let's just kind of coordinate those calendars so that once we finish a series of questions, we can come back and set a timeline so that we need to meet tomorrow, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we're going to do it. So with that was all I was asking, Mr. Mayor, for everyone to consider.
I think there's some urgency to Josh's piece. I hate that it's crammed in here with $17 million of other things, because I was told that we were going to be voting on $1 million, not $17 million.
That's fine. All I'm saying is...
I think his piece is time
But I got some
sensitive.
questions around that. So
Well, that's fine, but I think
Hold
his
on.
piece is...
Council Hoyt, let him
So
finish.
let's pass the one thing that's time sensitive so that our small businesses can see some relief with the partners and they can start fundraising for the other half. There's a lot of validity to that. Now, the rest of the $17.1 million, I don't know about. But
okay, here's
there is
where we are.
A time-sensitive issue.
Okay, Council Williams, what we're going to do is ask Mr. Lesher to finish his presentation. I was only asking everybody to look at their calendars. If we could finish the presentation, ask questions, but also look at your calendars so that we're going to ask everybody to make it important for the next every day. We've got to meet every day, all day to get this. So
So,
if you could.
as long as everybody's clear on what the funding source is, I apologize if I confused everybody, but basically, I was closing with the funding source as y'all asked.
Yeah, well, and I would need to know the current status of each one of those, the fund balance, what you call it, sunshine fund, or whatever you call it.
The rainy day fund?
The Birmingham fund. So, because I do know that much of that is predicated on the market.
Correct.
And so there might have been some changes between last week and this week. I'm almost sure of that.
Yes, sir.
So we can have some current, and then also, I know do we still have a financial advisor for the city?
We are in the process.
We don't have a financial advisor for the city?
No, sir.
Okay.
That's not good.
We understand that.
Well.
Okay, I was just, you still have the flow. You still have the floor.
And that's why I don't think we need to rush
Okay.
to decisions or what have you, because whatever we do in this moment, in this space, is going to impact what happens down the road. And I think you're right, sir. And even with the $1.2 million you're talking about small business, I need to understand what's going to be the parity in that. Are we just talking about restaurants downtown? Are we talking about restaurants in the whole entire city? And then if you made assessment, I think you said 17 businesses already been identified, then I need to know who are those 17 businesses, because I want to make sure that we have some economic parity in how we address these issues, and that we are not leaving out minority small owned businesses as well, because I can't vote on something that's not going to benefit everybody. I think we have to be conscious of that. And so there's a whole lot we need in terms of answers. And unless you know which restaurants are going to benefit from this, I'm sorry, Counselor, but then I just need to know. And if they've already made assessment, which was in my mind yesterday, that when they come up this number, that there'd probably been already some discussion and some folks who already been identified who might can receive this money.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and then we need to make sure that we don't set it up where minority businesses that are struggling can't also access this money.
Just a question about your comment.
Hold on, Council Williams. If you'll let me respond to Council Hoyt, and then I'll come back to you. Council Hoyt, on a couple of matters, what we're going to do. That's why I've asked us to look at our calendars so that we can have ongoing conversations, meetings, or special call additional council meetings over the next 4 or 5 days. So that's what we're going to be moving forward. We'll get a list of things that we need to coordinate with, and so if we have a special call, committee of the whole, or budget and finance, tomorrow we can outline what information we're requesting, and then also between committee meetings and special call council meetings, we're going to work through this over the next couple of days.
And does the small business also include nonprofits?
I understand that those are okay. So we're going to go down a list of things we need to ask.
Nonprofits.
Okay. So we're going to go through those questions, Councilor Hoyt, get a pathway forward that we all can work with. Is that okay, Councilor Hoyt?
That's fine, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. Councilor Williams, I'm sorry for interrupting.
So there was some talk about that there had already been some businesses selected. I'm confused about that. My understanding was there was going to be a board that maybe Mr. Dickerson, you were a part of, that took in applications and then evaluated them on, I'm sure, some criteria.
Correct. So last night, I sent a memo that had the loan review criteria. It's the 5th page of that memo. There will be a loan review committee, and Mr. Dickerson has a process, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about it. With regard to the 17 businesses that had been identified. They were not identified for this loan. They were identified as businesses that had been impacted by coronavirus. They have responded to an open survey. And again, I'm asking any small business owner who's listening to this, and I hope there are many, that they will fill out that survey on bhamstrong.com, because it would enable us to then be in a better position to get federal funding down the line.
And Mr. Dickerson, do you mind
Yeah.
speaking to how you will select the businesses so we will all know?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
And good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. So, no, I don't know of any businesses as of yet who we've identified or tried to qualify or assist in any way. So it's an open process from my standpoint. There's just from a procedural standpoint, businesses that are interested are going to have to go on the website, register, upload certain information, data that we can use to determine a few things. Creditworthiness, but not the same way we do in our normal lending process, because we know this is an emergency. But we do want to deal with businesses that are worthy, somewhat from a credit side, but also from a sustainability side. We want to make sure that we're lending money to businesses that can be around for a year or two or longer after this, because we don't want, this is in a lot of ways is an investment in those companies. And so we want them to be around for a long enough period of time to give us a return on the investment. Our idea in terms of processing the loan request is to get them in, have some preliminary qualifications, and assemble a loan committee or a loan review board. We've got some names on that I think most of us would be familiar with and comfortable with. And to make sure that there's diversity, both in terms of knowledge, but also in terms of interest on that board. I don't expect that we will have a committee that's going to lean too far one way or another. I do expect we'll have a committee that understands that that we've got to satisfy interest in all of our communities and not just focus on one type of business, not just focus on one area of town, and be fair and open about the process. My guess is that we're going to have way more opportunities to lend money than we have money to lend. And so we're going to have to be judicious in the way we do that. I've had a lot of experience in dealing with loan committees and dealing with lending. You know, one of the things you want to do is to not just be fair and open and consistent with the way you approve loans, but you also want to approve loans that ultimately do something. In this case, save businesses and save employment, you know, in most cases get paid back. And so I think that we'll follow, you know, those guidelines that we've used through the years. And we welcome any input, suggestions of people that we need to both consider for loans. I think that all of you should be referring people to the website. If you know of a company that you think is deserving or needy, refer them. And, you know, I just assure you I'm going to do my best to be fair and you know, equitable, honest across the board. So I hope that answers your question.
Could you give us that website again?
And that website, is that the
That's the BHAMstrong
bhamstrong.com
website. That's the website that they're going to go through.
Okay. Well, one thing on the, thank you for that. And from the documents that we got last night or early morning, it looked like that the max loan was $25,000. Is that still correct?
That's the maximum that we talked about. $10,000 to $25,000 is our target.
With that being said, Mr. President, is there any way that we can separate this one item? We're talking about $10,000 to $25,000 loans, and try to pass this item today, this one item today, for these small businesses that Mr. Dickerson just spoke to.
Okay. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to go Mr. Hilliard, and then Mr. Woods. President Pro Tem, Alexander, you have anything right now? Okay, so we'll go in that order, and then we'll come back on this side, but they hadn't spoken on this item yet. So
I don't think I spoke all really today, but I want to say, first of all, Mr. Dickinson, I really appreciate you coming before us. I think your excellent selection and your expertise. I've known you over many years and followed your career and the things that you've done. So I'm very pleased that you would even take the time and come down. I know it's very tight. With that said, I definitely think that we should look out in terms of the least of these, and I think in talking with you that has probably been looked at and been said, because what we want to make sure is that everybody from all of our districts are protected, as well as the city of Birmingham, and getting aid. I have been getting calls from small plumbing companies to small restaurant and businesses that 2 weeks will kill their business off. And that's going to be definitely a hurt to everyone else. I will admit, though, I do want to know more about what the federal government has done, and I think our president is reaching out to our United States senators and several others, our United States congresswomen and others, to provide us with some accurate information on how cities like our size and capacity will survive throughout this turmoil. I want to say to the president, my schedule is available 24 hours a day. I'm ready to meet and talk as much as possible. I want to make this work. I want to look out for our employees. I want to look out for our small businesses, but I want to look out for the city as a whole. I, for one, don't want to make any hasty decisions from some information that we've talked about over the last day or so, but I think we should give it 24 hours. To at least sit around and make sure that we make the right decision, because whatever decisions we make, which things they may change in terms of numbers on the coronavirus in the next hour or so, but I don't think that none of this will explode within 24 hours. I do want us to, pieces of it we should talk about. Maybe some of it we should vote on it today, but for the most part, I don't want to make any hasty decisions that will come back to hunt us down the road. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. President Pro Tem Alexander, then I'll come up to Councilor Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to echo what Mr. Hilliard has already said, and I do want to thank Mr. Carpenter, Dr. Carpenter, and Mr. Dickerson and the mayor for bringing this proposal to us and trying to give us an opportunity as the city of Birmingham to move forward on our own economic stimulus for our citizens, for our businesses. And so I would also like that we seriously consider I don't know if it was a motion or the suggestion that Mr. Williams put forth, is that we do entertain looking at these items individually that, again, would have the most impact on our citizens and on our businesses. I want to echo what you're saying, Mr. Hort. I believe in that this process be equitable, it be fair, and it represents the city. So I feel when we're talking in these terms, there's a difference in things being equal and them being equitable. And so I'm charging and I'm relying on you, Mr. Dickerson, with your experience in dealing with businesses and the sustainability of businesses, but that we keep in mind we have a city as a whole. And if when we start talking about the different type businesses, you mentioned plumbers. I mean, there are other service industries that out there are affected, that when we start looking at businesses, I guess my concern would be, again, you're going to have a process, and those businesses will fill out paperwork, and then that board would decide. So I'm asking council if we could entertain, and as Mr. Hilliard said, I'm available to meet at any time so that we can move this forward. But for today, if we could entertain looking at these items, the ones individually that impact citizens and businesses first, and move forward on that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Councilor Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. Definitely appreciate everybody's work on this. Bear with me, I have several questions associated specifically with this loan fund. One, I'd like to know a little bit more about what data will be used in the selection process of who you give loans to and who doesn't get loans.
Well, first and foremost, the people have to apply, and so that application will contain just the basic information on the business, name, where, address, who the principals are, and it'll drill down a little bit further. We are going to ask for financial statements, tax returns, and interim financial statements, and for the business to articulate, at least in writing, what this loan actually means to and for them, why it keeps them in business, what it does for their business, how long does it extend their livelihood and likelihood of success. So we're trying to evaluate more than just the ability to service the debt, even though that's part of it. But we're also evaluating the impact it has. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, there has to be a statement, sort of a promise from the business, and in addition to signing a promissory note, but a promise not to reduce employment, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep businesses to keep people employed.
Okay. Will they have access to, and will there be any weight given to, based on historical city tax payments from specific businesses?
So they will supply payroll statements, so bank accounts. We obviously don't want this loan to be used to, the ideal company is a company who was doing fine. The coronavirus came along and it disrupted their business, and now they're laying people off. So we're going to try to get every shred of data we can historically to make sure that they were a Birmingham-based business, hiring as many Birmingham-based workers as they could, and that this is disrupting that. So that would involve payroll data. We can run that against their business license ID, and we can certainly get that from the taxpayer. So the idea is that we can run that up against business license data as well. So we can have that data.
Okay. Will there be some level of threshold or minimum amount of revenue contribution in the form of some kind of taxes to really ensure that the businesses that operate in Birmingham, and kind of what Director Smith was hinting at, basically build this budget here at the city?
Right now, we haven't put a grocery receipts threshold on either side, either a ceiling or a floor. The only parameters we have right now is that it's not a business over 50 workers.
Okay. Do you feel like the, repayment duration term is adequate, if they're, in terms of being able to pay this back in 3 to 6 months?
Well, so it's a 180-day single payment loan. So that means they don't make any payments for 180 days. Our hope, of course, is that the virus goes away, people get back to normal, and they're able to pay. They can make payments in the interim. I think that was a question that we had yesterday. They can make payments on this note at any point in time. And we are making provisions to understand that some of them won't. And so at the end of that 180 days, we can have a period where we would term out whatever balance is left on the loans. So it's not, we're not totally reliant on them having the full principal balance. These are zero interest loans, but the full principal balance at the end of the 180-day period.
Okay. And then I'd like to know a little bit about the board size and how that board will be selected.
Well, we haven't selected a board yet. We've got names of people that we think would make good loan committee members based on their knowledge of business, based on their knowledge of lending. Obviously, we would want as much involvement from the funders. That includes you, and I'm assuming we're going to raise some money from some financial institutions. And so that you want to have the representatives of the money, helping to determine where their money goes. But we want to sprinkle that with folks who are not necessarily in the banking business. We're going to have a couple of those, but folks that understand business, understand finance. I don't want to sit up here and give names because I haven't talked to anybody yet, and so I don't want to share names. But I think when I do, there'll be names that you're familiar with, and I think names that you're comfortable with.
What's the ideal board size?
I think about 7 people should be a good loan committee. It's easier to get a quorum or get that many together. I think we can cover the kinds of knowledge and discipline we need with 7 folks. If we need to go a little bit larger, we can. I wouldn't suggest any smaller. And in addition, I'll mention this too. The one idea that I have, that in addition to having those loan committee members meet, that we also meet with some of the other lenders in the community the Sabres, the True Funds, the Lift Funds, there might be some opportunity for them to take some of these loans and take some of these clients. And so we want to give the client every opportunity to develop a relationship with a lender, whether it be the Bold Fund or whether it be a True Fund. And so I think having them involved and engaged in the process can help us do that.
And I think Dr. Carpenter touched on this, and then you mentioned that there'll be a requirement that the business can't reduce employees.
Well, you can requirement.
So the requirement is that they're going to do their very best to not reduce employees. So we had 5 sort of priorities or 6 priorities that we're looking for in funding. One of them is how we use this funding. In other words, if someone says, well, I'm going to use this to just pay down another loan or pay down debt, that's not helpful. If they say, I need this funding in order not to fire people, that is going to elevate that loan in terms of its importance for us. If they say, I need this loan to pay for sick pay so that I can make sure that my employees who are feeling sick don't feel obligated to come to work to get paid so they don't spread the virus. So we're looking in sort of a tier of priorities. A lot of that's going to have to be together qualitatively, and that's why the BBRC team is going to be there to underwrite that. And to review that. But the goal really is to not fire people. We don't want to say if you take this money, then we're going to go pursue you if you do. But the reality is that we're not going to try to give money to anybody who we think might fire someone.
All right, like I said, I got more questions I think we can maybe get together offline, but I would like to see whatever the plan and program is, I'd like to see it on paper. And so I think a lot of these.
Can you tell me explicitly though what you need in addition to what you receive? And I know you got it super late last night, and
I'm just saying, like, some of these specifics of the questions that you guys have answered just now, I think needs to be baked into, what the accountability is. It needs to be in one document. What the requirements are need to be clear at the beginning. For our sake and approving the money, but also in the transparency's sake for businesses that applied, and they're looking at one set of guidelines, and then if that changes somewhere down the road, that's not fair to them either. And so I think when you're moving this kind of money quickly, everything needs to be clear and spelled out up front. We don't want to rush and create an issue down the road with we just need to make sure all these funds are used appropriately.
Sure, and we share that concern. Our goal is, and I mean this sincerely, what you think needs to be in the document that's not already in front of you really matters to me. So whatever we can do to shape that up, we want to codify that for you in a level that gives you and the rest of the counselors comfort. We're working on a form right now. Our teams are both reviewing it. The goal is to get the form out as quickly as possible. The trade-off here is perfection versus getting money deployed to businesses who need it. I know you know this, but we know that more than half of our businesses can't make it for 14 days with interrupted cash flow. So what we're trying to do is recognize that while balancing it. So it's going to be a bit of us still shaping as much as possible and defining expectations. And so I really would appreciate your opinion on what else you think needs to be defined. I really do.
Right, and so like I said, I think that stat in and of itself, when you're talking about 14 days, kind of speaks to the ability to pay that in 6 months. And so I think that piece needs to be spelled out up front, what those terms are on the high end. Like I said, if because you're going to have some people that can't pay this in 6 months, and that's compounded by this crisis and stuff. But while we're talking, I think including in that document, would need to be some requirement to have paid some city revenue, payroll tax, all those things that benefit the city's budget. Then some sort of certified payroll on the back end, maybe some threshold of number of employees or percentage of employees that you need to keep. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have some more discussion in the next 24 hours offline. So appreciate you guys taking a minute.
If in fact we consider this today, this $1.2 I think, is it? 1.2 million, is that right? Yes, sir. Yeah. Then, Mr. President, I would also want us to consider that any persons that are receiving loans, having gone through your process, Bob, and let me say, I got all the confidence in the world in you and your ability and your acumen. So I've known you've been my banker at one point in time, maybe twice, at Compass and at Citizen Federal. So so I have all the confidence in the world in what you bring and the value you bring to this process. But I also want to suggest, Mr. President, that we would ratify any of those loans be ratified by this council, so that we can look at equity and those kinds of things, and to ensure. I just think we need to do that, and that the council needs to look at appointing members to that board, notwithstanding any suggestion that Bob would have, because he's in the industry himself, so he would know that or what have you. But I just think it needs to be, the final process needs to be ratified by this council.
Yeah. What I would say to that, if we, I think there was in part of the memo last night, or this morning rather, about that advisory committee. I think if there's enough appointees or designees, not council members, but the council appointing or recommending several people to let that advisory committee do its job, but the council having some appointees or designees to serve on the advisory board. I think that way things can move a little bit quicker, as opposed to trying to come back to us on Tuesday, every Tuesday, to wait when they need to move it fast. But I think the emphasis needs to be on the makeup of the advisory committee. I think that's something that work through that to make sure the council has designees on there that we can work through. I think that's the way we work through that one, Councilor Hoyt, as far as working through that process. And then just ask that Mr. Carpenter, Dr. Carpenter, and Mr. Dickerson, they just report back or send us a report back on a regular basis. Is that something that I think might be splitting the hairs, but we want to make sure that the council is.
But I don't want us to miss Council Wood's point to, so we understand, and even Dr. Carpenter mentioned about adding, I'm sorry, y'all can't hear. I'm so sorry.
About adding.
My preaching voice is a little bit stronger than that. But also didn't want to not include the council in terms of how you're developing the document, because what we don't want to do is to set it up and only a certain segment could benefit from this loan program. And let me just give you a reference. The float loan program the city has in place now, there are very few minority-owned businesses has an irrevocable letter of credit. Okay, so folks who borrowing that money don't necessarily really need it. They just, they're just getting it, what have you. But that's designed for for those folk who have that ability. But we want something that's going to help stimulate this economy, and they may not have the ability to have an irrevocable letter of credit. So I want us to consider that as we are, going through this process, and so that we're inclusive of all narratives that we have in with respect to businesses in this community. That's just me. But I think we would be prudent if we employed those tenants.
Mr. President, if I may, so I think what's up for consideration today is the actual amendment to allocate the funding, not the agreement with BVRC. So what we could do is discuss the specific loan terms in the interim week and the composition of the loan committee with Bob, and that part could be reviewed next week. This is just in my opinion, this is, and I think all of you care about the small businesses, especially in your community, in your district, this is a way of getting, frankly, establishing hope that there will be a fund soon, and that will establish the structure of the loan with terms, and I got those
Right,
down.
that'll be part of our work sessions over the next
Yes,
day or two. Okay, all right, I guess the other thing, and we can kind of circle back around, did we have the funding source, Chief? I guess because that needs to be a separate, we need to do it as a separate item?
Right.
Chief, or, I'm just saying as far as just the 1.2, so do we need to approve if we would consider just that item separately?
So as it relates to the 1.2 million, 200,000 will be paid out of IEO's current operating budget. The additional $1 million request will be paid out of the general fund.
Okay, when you say general fund, you mean surplus or just where out of the general fund?
Out of the general fund.
Okay, I would, no, what we're asking, and I know Councilor Abbott would want to, she's a stickler, but as relates to which categories, line items, where would we pull it from? That's what we're asking now, is where specifically?
Fund balance.
Okay.
Are these unallocated funds? Do we have a fund balance that we don't have an allocation to?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, so $1 million coming from fund balance.
What we were told last night about it coming from that $5 million of debt is not. Yeah. Okay.
It's not.
Sorry, I've been told several different things.
Okay.
But that's
So
the
it's-
latest version. Yeah, no, okay. All right, what other questions do we have for Dr. Queen? You got some?
Yep. So I want to come back to, if you allow it, I know two of the projects that we were discussing earlier were time sensitive in terms of the bids on those projects potentially expiring within days, if not hours. So since we're now discussing potential special call meeting of the council later this week, and which I am definitely available for, I'd like to know what is the drop dead day for making a decision on those two projects, the 6th Avenue Drainage Project and the Carver Theater Project.
We told those folk last week, and took our word, because you all were kind enough to pass it, that it would be done today, and they said we will hold it.
Okay, so let me just follow up on that statement. I mean, the rug has been pulled out from under us as a city of Birmingham by this virus. You know, I don't know what the average daily GDP of the city of Birmingham is, but you got to assume that it's on the scale of hundreds of millions of dollars a day exchange hands in the city of Birmingham every day. And as a result of social distancing and all of the other protocols that are being put in place, you got to also assume that a lot of that money is now not exchanging hands. And so it's not a desirable thing to do, but you know, we now have to be very thoughtful about what we're doing with our money, because the future is suddenly uncertain. These are really you know, I've been watching the Carver Theater for years now, and definitely want to see that project get done, not only for my district, but for the whole city of Birmingham. However, you know, the landscape has changed, and
Mr. President.
I would ask that we go back to those contractors that have offered the bids, you know, ask them to take this situation into perspective and at least give us, you know, an additional 48 hours, if not until the end of the week, to make a call on this.
Finance Department just told you all that what we need to cover on the next 60 days is before you. And it doesn't hurt those two projects. I'm telling you all, there's a balance in your duty. You have a duty to be concerned about the COVID, but you have a duty to meet the deadline for these two outstanding projects that have been open, have gone to bid not once but twice. If you allow them to close, you're not only putting those projects in jeopardy, the people you need to keep exchanging funds, money, they won't be able to work. In addition to that, I don't know how to make it plainer. Like, whatever you want to do with everything else, it's your desire. The Carver Theater in Cola, I would implore you to make a different decision.
So I'm not, you know, disputing anything that you're saying, Mayor. It's just that there's been a lot of information that has been, you know, directed at us this morning, and the situation that we had before us 2 weeks ago when we were talking about this is not the same as it is today. So, you know, it's our responsibility as a council to make sure that we're being thoughtful and that we're looking at the whole picture. So just to sum all of that up, I didn't get a clear understanding from what was presented by the finance director that we could do COLA, that we could do the Carver Theater project, that we could do the 6th Avenue drainage project, that we could do the landfill project, and take care of all of the additional things that you are putting before us. That's all I'm asking for, is convince me that we can do all of those things and still have the resources available to address this crisis.
All right?
All right, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you to.
It's in here.
I understand that. It's in there, but let me do
Remaining
this.
4 months of the budget.
I understand that. Here's what I want to do. I want to make a motion that we, and Mr. Clerk will have to help me, that we adjourn or recess till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock this evening. Or we can say 5 o'clock. I mean, we can do 5 o'clock. We can recess this meeting until 5 o'clock this evening.
Well, if you're doing it the same day, recess is fine.
Yeah, we just want to recess until 5 o'clock this evening.
Okay, so move. Second.
Okay, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Okay. All right, this meeting's recessed until 5 o'clock.